Good evening. We'll call the meeting to order, please, with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. Roll call, Mr. Lundberg.
Mullin.
Yes.
Odie. Saxer. Scott. Yes. Bell. Yes.
All right, with that, we need to, under personnel, strike items 6 and 7, please. With that amendment, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended, please.
So moved. Second.
There's been a first and a second. All of those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. No conflict of interest disclosure or waiver requests this evening. Community input? No, I'm not seeing any. That takes us to general business, oral reports. The first item we have is the good news report from the Special Services Department.
Good evening. As the Assistant Special Services Director, I would like to take a few minutes tonight to highlight a couple programs within our Special Services Department that play an important role in supporting the diverse needs of our students. But before I begin, I want to acknowledge and give recognition to the multiple individuals that make up our Special Services team in our district. From early childhood through high school, they're a dedicated group and they make a meaningful impact on each of our students every day. So as I stand here tonight to talk about these two programs, I want to make sure I give credit to the whole team because they are vital and they are committed and work hard in our district. Later in my presentation, you will hear me mention again how important team support is, especially in my role as the liaison for our McKinney-Vento and our migrant education programs for our district. And first of all, I have on our slide, I'm going to talk about and just give a brief overview of the programs to help clarify their purposes and the eligibility requirements. I'll begin with the McKinney-Vento program. This is based on the Homeless Assistance Act, which is a federal law, and it provides educational rights and services to children who are experiencing homelessness. I've listed those points there. The 3 points that are listed are basically require that if a student that's homeless comes into our district, they can enroll without having to have any documentation, and they don't have to wait for that documentation as typical enrollment would. Another is that they can continue their education if they would happen to move out of our boundaries. They can continue to stay at their school of origin, which would be the Brand Valley District. And in addition, it eliminates those segregated services and any other barriers that may prevent a child from receiving services. To be eligible for the program, there are a few things, but mainly we look at if they're lacking a fixed, a regular, and adequate nighttime residence. And when we think of homelessness, many of us think of those individuals who may be living on streets or in cars, but the McKinney-Vento Act also includes families that may have to move in with other families and individuals due to a loss of housing or economic hardship. And it also includes those children that may be living in hotels, motels, campgrounds, or in shelters. And when these questions and concerns are presented in our district, they generally are referred to me by staff members. And then I reach out to the families, introduce myself, ask them questions about their recent move. And as I mentioned earlier about the importance of teamwork, it is valuable here. Since this conversation can be very sensitive for the families, it helps that the person who's made the referral has a connection or a relationship with that family. Children who are not in the custody of their parents and may be residing with a caregiver are also eligible for services. We call this as the unaccompanied youth. And this also includes students who are older and may be living on their own. And they also need to meet those requirements, though, of having that lack of that fixed, adequate, and regular residence. Now let's jump over to the migrant education. There, it's a similar purpose of supporting that quality education, eliminating those barriers, and it's put in place to support our education programs for the migratory children, and then, excuse me, offer support to reduce disruptions that tend to result because of their frequent moves. It also ensures that these children are provided with a program that helps them overcome their cultural or language barriers. And at Brandon Valley, this is where our EL programs have become a very vital support for these students. To be eligible for this program, the family must have made a move in the previous 36 months to engage in temporary or seasonal agricultural work due to economic necessity, or a child is moved to join a parent who's a migratory worker. And again, these referrals are generally sent to me by when they enroll in the district. On the next slide, I've listed the data for the last few years that shares how many children and families have benefited from these programs. As you can see, the need for these services continues to grow each year in both of those programs, the McKinney-Vento and migrant education programs. Some positives that I've listed and also indicate how the support has assisted a number of seniors to graduate, and that many families have continued to make Brandon Valley their home even after they are no longer eligible for services. In the last 3 years, there were 6 unaccompanied youth who graduated as seniors. These referrals came from our high school counselors who recognized the need, took action to support these students, and this helped them to graduate. And you'll later see a quote from one of our seniors. As I mentioned earlier, there are a number of supports offered to the children and families, and on our next slide, you can see those supports. I've listed many of them, but I would have to say that transportation and meals are the main concerns. Once I meet with the family and eligibility is determined, I then send that information on to our nutrition department, and they go ahead and take that, and then those meals are free of charge for those students. But the transportation can be a little trickier. I always begin by working with our district transportation department to make those arrangements. And as long as we are working within our district boundaries, the transportation department can generally come up with a route very quickly. However, there are times when those families decide to move and place in a neighboring district, and since it's in the child's best interest to remain at the Brandon Valley School District, their school of origin, in these cases, we look at multiple options for transportation. If the family has a vehicle, we may offer to pay transport and to transport their children to and from school or to a bus stop within our boundaries. However, not all of these families have working vehicles at the time, so I have arranged taxi services for some of those students to get to school and to get back home, or to their local bus stop is one way. But it also depends on the length of time that they're staying, how long they're going to be there, and then I just continue to work with those families to determine the best mode of transportation. But in either way, we make sure that they get to school each day. In addition, I'd also work with the neighboring district liaison to come up with a plan, and we can share transportation in those cases. In some of those cases, they may offer transportation to our boundary, which we can then arrange to meet at one of our bus stops. However, it is arranged, it's done in a quick manner, like I said, so that we eliminate any disruption to the child's education. An additional resource that I refer our families to is the 211 helpline within our community. This provides them with multiple resources for income-based housing, information on the local food pantry, along with referrals for medical care, and then information on our local shelters if needed. At the bottom, I have also listed a support that is provided to our students who are identified and eligible for our migrant education program. Toward the end of each year, the State Department provides each of these students with a backpack of educational materials to help support their summer learning. And these backpacks are sent to the district and then distributed out to those students and sent home at the end of the year. So it's a very good program. As I mentioned earlier, and can't say it enough, it takes a team to help identify the families that need these supports. It also takes training to understand what to look for, and crucial questions could be asked. Jennifer Swenson does a wonderful job when enrolling new families, and we work very close together. We have worked together to develop some questions to ask as she's enrolling. If concerns arise, these concerns, then Jennifer is quick to reach out to me so that I can contact the families as quick as possible. I also rely on the information from counselors, administrators, and teachers who work closely with these students each day to give me the information. And lastly, I would like to share how we support the needs of our staff by offering training and book studies to help create awareness of the diverse needs of our students. This fall, during our in-service, the staff will be provided with a short video to help them gain an understanding of the McKinney-Vento, and then how they can assist with identifying children who may be experiencing homelessness. This past year, in addition, a staff development member I know had facilitated a book study on empathy and creating awareness, understanding the lives of students. Various speakers were brought to discuss the diverse needs of our students, and I know I left in tears after one of the speakers, so I know it was good for many, and I heard many positive reviews there. We recently also received a grant from the American Rescue Plan for Homeless Children and Youth, in which we purchased multiple books that provide insight and strategies on how to engage students who are dealing with these difficult situations. And our plan is to continue incorporating those into book studies. On the last slide, I just wrote a couple quotes. I know all of these families that I work with are very appreciative of our supports, but there's just a couple of those that I've included. So that's my presentation for tonight. Do you have any questions?
I sincerely appreciate just sharing the awareness of the programs. I know there's so many that go on in our school district, so it's great to have an intro to some of these. Thank you for the work that you do.
Yes, thank you so much for the intro to the program. Quick question for you. So are these people that are in district today that become homeless generally, or is it, or how would a homeless person become part of the district?
It's both. It happens during the school year, just our students that are in our district.
Okay.
And then there's also students that move into our district from neighboring districts that are homeless.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, administration reports, Superintendent Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few items to update the board on here this evening. Berkman Valley Elementary School process continues. I would say now that the weather's warming up and getting a little nicer out there, if any board members would like to take a tour of that respective facility during the construction process here this summer, probably a little bit more of an opportunity to do that. Would ask you to contact my office and we can set that up accordingly. But at this time, all trades continue to work. Progress continues. No change to the timeline. Brandon Valley Middle School addition, there's obviously dirt turning and whatnot. Ground has been prepped up. I would anticipate that we start to see footings dug and foundation work begin here real shortly. They'd done some preliminary work on the north west corner for what will be the movement of a transformer and some infrastructure work that will allow us to expand that wrestling room and that respective locker room space. So no change at that point in time. Project continues. Budget overview here this evening. We're going to have a preliminary budget presentation from Mr. Lundberg with the public budget hearing occurring at our annual meeting in July. We've talked a little bit about road construction projects. Can add Holly and Sioux Boulevard to that, as it may be impacting in and out here a little bit for some of us here in Brandon to start. We certainly appreciate the city's coordinating that to start after the school year had ended. So thank you for that. And then just folks, as they take the summer and begin to prepare for next year, our academic calendar is outlined there for your respective review, bringing new staff on August 12th. In-service and workshop schedules outlined for your review. August 20th is the first day for students grades 1 through 12 with our junior kindergarten and our kindergartners doing their family visits on that Wednesday and Thursday. And then the first day for JK and kindergarten is a Friday, August 22nd. First day for early childhood is Monday, August 25th. Would just note special thank you and shout out to buildings, grounds, maintenance, custodial staff, all those folks. Summertime is an extremely busy time in the school district, and it has not necessarily anything to do with classrooms and teaching and learning, but more so with cleaning, refurbishing, refreshing, maintenance issues, all while coordinating around the 10 million activities that are going on in the schools. So certainly appreciate everyone's understanding as we have to get those things done, buildings and grounds and operationally. And sometimes it throws a wrinkle into this camp or that camp if something gets moved or shimmied. But at the end of the day, really appreciate all the work that gets done over the summer to get us ready for the upcoming school year. And there is a bunch of it going on this summer, so you can expect to see a lot of action within our buildings from those respective crews. Would certainly entertain any questions you have at this time.
Any questions this evening? All right. No board policy this evening. That takes us to general business, item number 1, the Brandon Valley School District 2025-2026 preliminary budget presentation.
I got my marching orders from the board member sitting to the right, so I will get going right away. The first slide is the 25-26 budget presentation, the overall overview of all the funds. I truly believe it's a very solid budget that deals with next year, but also, more importantly, deals with the next 5 years, puts you in a very solid financial position. The general fund shows, why won't that show up?
It's not showing up on the screen.
Do you want me to go point at it?
We have a drawback to the TV. Here, I can.
And to think, I spent a couple $1,000s on that. The general fund has just under $43 million in revenues and just over $43 million in expenditures for a budgeted deficit of $80,000 for 25-26. Capital outlay fund has $10,265,000 in revenues, $8.9 million of expenditures. It's a surplus of $1,335,000. Special ed department has revenues of $11,277,000, expenditures of $11,085,000 for a budgeted surplus of $192,000. Bond redemption has revenues and expenditures of $3,440,000. And then child nutrition fund has revenues of just under $4 million and expenditures just over $4 million with a deficit of $95,000. Overall, the expenditure budget is $70,566,000 for the 25-26 school year. Second slide is reviews the general fund state aid formula. I like to take you guys through this just so you have a recollection of how the whole process works. The state aid fall enrollment count is projected to be 5,225 kids. That is plus 90 from where we are today. They divide that by 15. It's student to staff ratio of 15. All the largest schools get. So it says we should have 348 teachers. We get an adjustment for our ELL kids, limited English proficiency, which adds almost two FTE to our teacher count for total teachers of 350.25. The instructional staff salary is set of $62,821 is set by the state of South Dakota. The benefits are 29% of that $62,000, $18,218. I just note at Brandon Valley that number is, our benefits run 34%, not 29. So well above that, well above the instructional staff salary too. So the state is saying total staff salary and benefits is $81,000 times the 350 teachers. Says we have a total need for staff and salaries at $28,384,000. All other expenses, the overhead is set at 38.78% of the staff and salary need for another $11 million. So down at the bottom, 28.3 million plus 11 million gives us a total need of 39,391,000. We can generate $13,171,000 of property taxes from a state mandated property tax levy. That is set by the state of South Dakota every year. So whatever that levy is, that's what we shoot at, and we can generate $13.2 million. The other little caveat in the funding formula is that other revenue equalization I talked to you guys about. This causes a little bit of a, not problem, it's just something that we have to deal with in the budgeting process because it fluctuates from year to year, our other revenues. This year, it's gonna fluctuate a ton, so I'll talk about that later. So this is from 2 years ago, the 1.7 million. You take that away from the total need, it gives a state aid of $24,465,000 for 25-26.
Is the overhead calc, is that based on historical semester, is that an average for all schools, or what's that?
It's established.
It's an established state number.
Okay. The next slide shows the different categories of the general fund, $26.8 million of instructional expenses, 62% of our total general fund budget. The state average is 56%, so we're 6% over the instructional side. And basically that boils down to our salary and benefits. Support services budget is 4% of our total general fund budget. The state average is 38%. Activities is 1.2 million, which is 2.8% of our total budget. It averages 4.7% in the cost of state. Now, the state of South Dakota will have, I think, a higher average because it depends on how they report different activities. Some of our, I'll say, our fine arts activities are considered credit courses, so they don't get reported under the activities budget, they get reported under the instructional budget. And then lastly, early retirement, $256,000 this year, 0.6%, and the average across the state of South Dakota is 0.6% too. 20. Yes, sir.
Go back to your. Okay, going back to
This one?
Okay.
your 62%, just, yeah, 62.4%. Does that include the Christmas bonus and all that too, or is that in on that?
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
Yep. And that's pretty much the extent of the driver there, are salaries and benefits in the instructional side, or that's what's driving that to be 6% higher than the state average. The enrollment projections for next year, as I said, plus 90. Down the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see a total of, for 25-26, of 5,223 students versus this year of 5,132 students. Total increase of 90 kids. Elementary, if you go back up in the upper tier there, elementary last year was 2,981. Next year it's 2,985 projected. So pretty level. Not much growth in the elementary. Middle school has some growth, quite a bit of growth just from class sizes moving up, smaller going out, bigger one coming in. 768 versus 828, that's plus 60. High school has a growth of 26 kids, projected growth, 1,450 projected for next year versus 1,424 this year.
Is that also due to class sizes just increasing, going up, or is there moving to the district by high school kids?
I didn't,
So I would say you're graduating a group of seniors that's a little bit smaller
yeah.
than the incoming freshmen. So
Right.
there's some built in there too. There'll be some in and outs.
Not people moving in.
not
There'll be
overall. There's a lot of shifting going on between grades and stuff, but the major part of our growth is 300 kids going out for graduation, 380 coming in for kindergartners. That's major growth. And that is key. The elementary has stabilized. We have a little bit of a tweak in there in grades 3, 4, 5 that you're looking at classes of 430, 450, and that are gonna run through the system, but it really, as I've talked to you before, it looks like the elementaries are gonna stabilize in that 400 category, 400 level. So that's gonna continue for the next foreseeable future that I can project.
So 5 to 10 years, we'll have a stabilization of that growth rate, because we're
Right.
just dealing with boluses
Correct.
of
Correct.
classes.
Yep, you're gonna see that stabilization of 400 kids, and that's, you know, obviously, the growth that we have going on around, the Brandon Valley School District is gonna benefit us. We're gonna experience more growth than normal, and it's a national trend with, elementary class sizes stabilizing or going down. It's definitely a trend. The general fund, expenditures, from last year to this year, I like to do a comparison chart. The instructional budget is up $1 million, 3.9%. Sports services budget is up $900,000, 6.6%. The early retirement expenses basically doubled this year versus last year, increase of $125,000. And co-curricular went up just under 8%, $86,000, for a total of $2,133,000 of increases in the general fund. Where that comes from, 2.5% across the board salary increase, plus an increase in the salary enhancement that we gave staff of $350 per staff member, amounted to about $850,000. Benefits increased $157,000, additional staff of $800,000. We had quite a number of people retiring this year, high dollar people that were able to realize savings of roughly $115,000. Property insurance and utilities went up $170,000. As I said before, early retirement payments went up $125,000, and then all other $146,000, for a total of $2.1 million. That's a generalized concept of what the general fund did. Next slide just shows the number of FTEs versus our enrollment. Next year, we'll have 340 certified FTEs for 5,225 kids. Next slide is our per pupil allocations and our percentage increases. This year, our percentage increase was 1.25%, which is reflected on the lower slide. 2 years ago, it was 6%. Last year was 4%. This year, it's 1.25%. Kind of going the wrong direction. The actual per pupil allocation for next year will be $7,590, I believe it will be. Next slide is per pupil expenditure chart of all the schools in the large school group. Brandon Valley, as we've seen many times before, is very, very competitive in our cost per student. We average $9,781 per student. That's a rank of 141 out of 148 school districts in the state. T is actually the 148th at $8,911.
What's the other one? That's kind of next to us.
Meade, Sturgis. Sturgis, they're a little lower than us too, just barely. The three, as I've talked to you before about the three variables, and you know, everything I preached to you, that our general fund is state aid and local taxes, which are equalized, but there are three variables in there. Opt-outs, quite a number of schools have general fund opt-outs, we do not. Federal revenues are another big player in this. We do not have a lot of federal revenues. And then lastly, capital outlay flexibility transfers. We do utilize that to the point of 1.4 million. I don't know how that compares to other schools, but those are the three variables that can fall into place on this. Because all things being equal, every school should be exactly the same, but they're not totally equal. The general fund, fund balance history. We are going to end this year at, I'm projecting $8.7 million of fund balance. This is a significant increase from where we were last year, and I've been talking to you about this during the year, we're gonna have about $1.5 million increase in our fund balance. That's due to, 400,000 we realized in extra enrollment. It was higher than we projected. Bank franchise tax came in $600,000 more than what we projected. That's where we have that other revenue that we gotta do the song and dance on that, and so in a year, you're gonna be utilizing fund balance to balance your budget, because that'll show up then in another year. And then lastly, it should be, we're projecting about $500,000 of less expenses than budgeted for this year, for a total of 1.5 million plus 7.2 million, will make $8.7 million of fund balance, general fund balance. That will be approximately 21.5% of your total expenditures. Next year, I have it going up slightly, $200,000, 8.9 million. Even though I showed a deficit, we generally underexpend our expenditures, so I have it still going up at 200,000. And that'll be just under 21%. Your budget, or your goal as a Board of Education is 15%, so we're a little higher than that. But you'll need that going into those future years that I talked about with the fluctuation of the other revenues. You're gonna utilize some of that to balance the budget in the future years. That's why the budget is well directed to take you into not only next year, but the next 5 years. In addition to that, you're gonna be coming on with a brand new building and a fairly large addition that has significant operating expenses involved with it. Generally, I figure about $4 a square foot in this elementary school is 100,000 square feet, so that's 400,000 just to put custodians, heat, and lights into the building. And that's all projected in our 5-year plan.
Paul, when does the limit on tax increase on property start impacting us?
Yesterday.
Couple years.
Can I get to that? Yep, I'll touch on that here a little later in the slide. The next slide is the other revenues that we talked about. The major one in that thing is the middle chart, the bank franchise tax. In 24-25 came in at 1.35 million versus 850,000 the year before. So a $600,000 increase there. That's where you get those fluctuations, make it difficult for us to budget it precisely in that, but we deal with it. It's just a matter of managing the fund balance. So those other revenues still come into play even though they're supposedly equalized and into the formula now. The capital outlay fund that's the end of the general fund. Capital outlay fund has $8.9 million of expenditures. The breakdown of those expenditures is on the slide. 1.4 million in transfer, 2.4 million in technology. I might add on that technology, we have a very good plan as far as how we stagger the purchases of those. Those one-to-ones are all on a 4-year rotation. So I got the schools staggered. So one a year, not multiple in the same year. So they're all staggered, plus all the other replacement technology. Of the 1.4 million, 2.4 million, 1.4 million is for the high school one-to-one this year. Facility improvements, just under 1.3 million. Transportation, 536,000. Debt service, 2,351,000. That's a significant jump from last year. We issued bonds for the new school, new elementary school, and the addition on the middle school. That's all within the current levy, though. There's no increase in the levy in the capital. You can't increase that. So it's 26% of our total budget is debt service now in the cap. It's still considerably lower than most districts. You can have up to half of your levy go to debt service without going to a public vote. So we're at a quarter of it. Debt service and the capital outlay is the next slide. Total payments out of that, $2,351,000. We have a portion of the intermediate school is capital outlay certificates. When we did that, we built that school, we tried to limit the amount that we did in a general fund bond, general obligation bond to try to minimize the impact on taxpayers. This is all very important stuff, guys, of what we try to do to minimize the impact on our tax-paying patrons. So we did capital outlay certificates for a portion of the intermediate school. Those will be paid off in 2033, which is 7 years from now. And then the other debt we have is the new elementary school and the middle school addition. We just got done issuing the bonds for the middle school addition. So these numbers are up to date and accurate. $1,814,000 is what we'll pay out. The balance that we have on all those certificates combined is $30,265,000. I think we're authorized for $36 million. Well within, and got a 100,000 square foot elementary building and a nice addition to the middle school. That's all within a current levy. There's no increase in taxes. The special education fund is next. As I said, $11,085,000. Last year was 10.977. It's an increase of 108,000, which is only a 1% increase in our budget for next year. We seem to have a pretty good control on our expenses for this next year, 25-26. But I say that with intrepidation because you never know, guys. This is a fund that I preach to you all the time that can change on a dime. But we're pretty well positioned right now for next year in the special education fund and try to stabilize that for the next couple of years to get us in a position where we have a 15% fund balance back in there. The revenues from special education fund, 56% local, 35% state, and 9% federal. I always like to point that out. The next fund is the bond redemption fund, $3,440,000 of total expenses coming out of there. The intermediate school, as you can see, is about half, I think, that we ran the bond issue for versus the other half in capital outlay certificates, strictly and solely to minimize the impact on our district patrons. That will be paid off in 7 years. That'll be here before you know it. So that's a very good. On the far right then, Fred Assam Elementary and the High School Activities Center addition, $2.9 million is the balance right now. We're paying $1,973,000. This will be paid off in 1.5 years, December of 27. I can't believe that this TV won't let me show.
What would you like me to point out?
The $1,973,000. That is the portion of our debts, general obligation debt service right now. That's 60% of our total expenditure is on Fred Assam Elementary and the High School Activity Center in addition. That is coming off in a year and a half. Coming off, I say that. You probably have some things to replace it, but that's the key. It's not in addition. There's not going to be another slide off here to the right, even though I can't show it. There's not going to be one over here. Gonzo. This last slide would be Gonzo and something else, so it's level. It's not increasing. Very important. Valuations for 25-26. I'm projecting $4,347,000,000 versus $4,044,000,000. Increase of $303 million, 7.5% increase in total valuation. This is where Senate Bill 216 takes in account. If you recall, during the 5-year plan, I told you, I said, I'm giving you worst-case scenario. At that time, I wasn't sure when they were gonna implement it. This isn't implementing until '27. In addition, at that time, it was a 2% increase rather than a 3% increase. So it really was the worst-case scenario, but it's still not a great scenario. I made some notes that the capital outlay fund was able to garner additional taxes of about $800,000 under the current law this year. So we're gonna get $800,000 more in the capital outlay fund at the same levy. We'll get 3% of 3% increase plus the growth. If that Senate Bill 216 is implemented on this year, which it's not, we would only be able to realize $550,000. That's the bad thing about the law, folks, that majority of that is growth. That's new homes, new businesses. Now, as I get to the next slide, we've had substantial increases in valuations. We all know that. Our homes have gone up. During COVID, they shot through the roof. Stuff went up. And I understand the commitment on the part of the governor's office to try to limit that growth. But the problem is, schools like Brandon Valley, we're gonna be penalized for this because we're gonna have growth, actual growth, new homes, new businesses. Whereas the other school districts in the state of South Dakota, they don't have 11% average growth in a year. They have 3% average growth in a year, which includes assessment increases and new growth, total. So that's the bad thing about this. And as Jared has said, he's been to a number of meetings, and there's quite a bit of consternation over the whole bill, so who knows what'll happen in the end.
There's a summer study as well.
Doing a summer study as well, yeah. We'll definitely voice our opinion. As you've probably seen lately, the city of Sioux Falls is really voicing their opinion on this thing. And I don't know how else to put this. It's really kind of, I'm gonna say, penalizing a few of us metro area school districts and cities and stuff. You guys have done the right thing. You've not issued bonds to pay for new schools just by keeping the levy the same. You lowered your levy. Therefore, the increases in valuation have been absorbed. We've lowered that levy. The mantra of other people is to keep the levy the same. You have not done that. You've done your diligence to the taxpayer and lowered that levy to make up for that increases in the valuation. So anyhow, that's my high horse there. Valuations, 11% increase over the past 10 years. They've gone up. Can't make that up. That's factual. The next slide is the actual mill levies projected for 26 versus 25. Down at the bottom, the ag levy is projected at 5.74 versus 5.9 this year. 7.13 next year for the owner occupied, 7.38 this year. 982 for commercial versus 1024 last year. It's a decrease of about 3.5% across the board in the actual levy. The last slide is a comparison of metro area school district taxes and valuations. I think this is a key slide for you guys to zone in on. This is from 23-24, which is the last year that we have statewide data. I can't get any newer data than this. 3.6 billion of property valuations at Brandon Valley, 5.1 billion at Harrisburg, 1.3 billion at T, 18.2 billion at Sioux Falls. The last three of those schools up there all have general fund opt-outs. Brandon Valley does not have a general fund opt-out. The tax levies per thousand, 621 for ag land in Brandon Valley, 992 in Harrisburg, 851 in T, and 576 in Sioux Falls. Sioux Falls has very, very little ag land anymore. Amazon took the last of their ag land, I think, out there. Owner occupied homes, 784 in Brandon Valley, 1180 in Harrisburg, 1014 in T, and 763 in Sioux Falls, very comparable to Sioux Falls. Commercial property is $11 a thousand in Brandon Valley, 1124 in Sioux Falls, 1544 in Harrisburg, and 1330 in T. All this and still maintaining the highest average teacher compensation in the state of South Dakota. $85,368 at Brandon Valley. Those levies are lower, average compensation is the highest. That's a pretty good combination. A great majority of that success is due to the general obligation debt and the capital outlay certificate debt. Remember, this is from 23-24, so we're not showing our new debt and the capital outlay certificates, but we have $24.8 million of outstanding GO debt. Harrisburg School District has $203.6 million of GO debt. T has $70 million of GO debt, and Sioux Falls has $195 million of GO debt. That's all I have. It's a solid plan for you guys, I think, for not only next year, for the next 5 years. Any questions?
Just a, like, clarification, going back to the state aid formula, when they divide it by 15, that's not really 15 per class, it's more 15 per FTE, correct? Yeah,
Correct.
okay,
And
because
that's
we're
a-
right at it.
That's an arbitrary number set by the state of South Dakota, 15 for the large schools. What does it drop down to? 12 or 13 for the smaller schools.
Okay. Yeah,
So-
sometimes it comes into question of how come we don't have smaller classroom sizes, it's like, well, it's person to number of
Right,
students, yeah.
Right. Anything else?
Madam Chair, I would just like to thank Mr. Lundberg as well as Mr. Schobert, Ms. Miller, and Ms. Bruce for all their diligent work on the budget. It's months and months and months in the process. They do an outstanding job of compiling all of that information and putting it together. I think Mr. Lundberg does a great job of presenting the budget in an understandable way so the community can dive in and watch the slides and see how the actual funding mechanisms work. So, job well done.
Thank you.
Second that.
Thank you.
It's really easy to take pictures of these on your phone, keep them in your gallery, then if you get asked questions at the local store, you just, that's what I do.
That's
But
what I do.
I just want to say thank you, not only for the budget, but also I think you can't overstate your focus on the taxpayer and the community. And so I think, it'd be easy here for us to keep our levies the same, to increase rates as rates increase, and to take an easy road out, whether it's through special education or through this budget. And you haven't, and you've presented a really good plan forward, even despite difficulties. And I think that's, again, thank you for all your hard work.
That's, as we've talked about on this board for 100 years, the key is the planning of that stuff. Have a plan and live through the plan.
I was just gonna make a comment, when gathering at the other districts, and I'm sure Dr. Larson probably hears similar, rather than being in survival mode of year to year, it's more of how do we plan several years ahead, how do we look? And that has something I greatly appreciate, has set us apart from others. So I think rather than just in survive, we actually thrive because of that planning, so thank you.
Correct.
Thank you very much. All right, general business, I would entertain a motion to approve items 2 through 14, please.
Moved.
Second.
There's been a first and a second, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes, thank you. Under personnel, I would entertain a motion to approve items 1 through 5 and 8 through 26, please.
So moved.
There's been a first and a second, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes, thank you. Items 27, 28, and 29 are for your information only. Under communication, there are a number of thank yous there to the Board of Education, so please look at those. Under board reports, does anyone have a formal board report that they would like to share this evening? All right, with that, that takes us to the end of our schedule.
Can I?
Oh, go ahead.
I'd just like to
Sorry.
say, congratulations to our, high school baseball team. They won the championship, was that Friday night? Saturday night, thank you. So congratulations.
Thank you for that. All right, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
There's been a first and a second. All of those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.